Welcome back to Milan Recording Studios. My name is James Pavel Chakras, and in today's video, as usual, we'll be comparing two different digital pianos. A common question I get, or a common thread of conversation that I see both in my own comment section here on YouTube and also just in general discussion online amongst piano enthusiasts, is Yamaha's P-series. You have a few different instruments in this line, the P-45, the P125, the P515, and people often try to figure out when Yamaha will be releasing a new version of these instruments. It's been quite a while since any of these instruments have been updated, and so many people are speculating that at some point Yamaha may be updating the P125 and the P515. Personally, I believe those instruments are very competitive in their price classes, and while they maybe could have a very minor facelift, they don't need any major improvements. The P45, however, which is the instrument on top here, that's a different story. I think the P-45, when it first released, was a very fantastic beginning digital piano. Now I think it's beginning to fall behind the times, thanks to instruments like the Donner DEP-20, which is the instrument sitting here on bottom. So what I wanted to do today is compare these two instruments, which in many regards could be considered as equals, but yet at the same time, they aren't really equals at all. In fact, the Yamaha P-45, I almost called it the P515, no idea why. The Yamaha P-45 here up on top costs a little bit under $500 US. You can usually see it for sale online at around $499 US. Whereas the Donner DEP-20, which has on paper many more features, and again, on paper is actually a more fully featured instrument, can be purchased online for as cheap as $330-something US on Amazon. So it's very interesting that a more affordable digital piano by far has, on paper, and I stress that, on paper, many more features, and in fact, better features and better qualities than Yamaha's $499 digital piano. And why is this? Isn't that strange? Well, let's dive into these two instruments and talk about their differences and talk about their similarities, and then try to decide which one of them is best for you. Now, something I wanted to mention here is that whenever I'm talking about the Donner DEP-20, talking about its positive aspects and its negative aspects, many of these, almost all of these features about the Donner DEP-20 can also be said about a very similar instrument, the Innovis i88, which is a much more attractive digital piano than the Donner DEP-20. One of my biggest gripes with the Donner is that it's really ugly. It's about 7 inches tall from top of the keyboard to the bottom of the keyboard. It's really, really fat. And although it is relatively light and still easy to port around, it's just so heavy. I said the word heavy. I meant the word tall and just massive. I've got my piano bench here boosted all the way up to its maximum height, which is much higher than your normal piano bench, and this Donner DEP-20 still feels a little bit too high, and my keyboard stand is on its lowest setting. So the Donner DEP-20 is a rather ungainly instrument, and the top of it also is a little bit ungainly. So the Innovis i88 is a much more attractive digital piano that has all of the same sounds and almost all of the same features, actually even more features than the Donner DEP-20. So if you're not interested in the DEP-20 for whatever reason, you can't get it, such things, the Innovis i88 is also a very, very similar instrument. And Innovis is kind of a cool company who's always looking to improve their instruments. And while the current i88 isn't 100% perfect, future versions of the instrument will definitely be improved. I've talked with the company, they're working on improving the speakers for sure, and other aspects of the instrument, which is awesome. So with that out of the way, just keep that in mind that whatever I say about the Donner can typically pretty much be said about the Innovis i88. They are very similar instruments with only a couple of minor differences, the biggest being the aesthetics. And let's dive into the video itself. So, using the Yamaha and the Donner. Why am I starting off with this? Well, this is one of my biggest complaints with the Yamaha P-45. The number one thing you will need to do to know how to play and use this instrument, besides general piano skills, is this: the owner's manual. Because to do anything in the Yamaha P-45 besides work with the metronome and work with the sounds by changing them and increasing the volume, everything outside of that you will need the owner's manual for, because the Yamaha P-45 is the most minimalistic digital piano on the market right now. Every single feature other than those I've already mentioned, changing sounds and using the metronome, everything else, and it has a few features, everything else is hidden away in the keys. So you press the function button located all the way over here, and then sometimes you'll have to push keys that are all the way up here to access certain functions. So you hold the function button down and you push certain keys, and you will get a little clicking noise to indicate that you've made a change. and things like that. So every single feature is hidden away in the instrument like that, and none of them are labeled other than your metronome controls, which are here, and your sound controls, which are here, those just being the names of the different sounds hidden on those keys. Now, the instrument has a large number of other features in here. You can layer sounds, you can split sounds. You can put the instrument in duo mode. You can actually change the level of reverb in the instrument. What else? You can change the touch sensitivity. You can transpose the pitch by semitones. You can fine-tune the pitch. You can listen to demo songs. What else? You can change the tempo and things like that. All those features are hidden away in the keys, and 0 of them are labeled. Now, the Donner DEP-20 has many of those same features. You can transpose. You can change your sound. You can turn on demo. You can even make basic recordings. You've got your metronome. You can change the tempo of that. You even got drum beats over here. You can do things like that, all without having to do any of those crazy hold the button down, press an unlabeled key thing. So while the Donner DEP-20's user interface isn't perfect and it's very quirky, it is actually much more easy to use than the Yamaha P-45s. If I wanted to go ahead and make a change to the reverb or change the touch sensitivity, I'd have to pull out the owner's manual to do so. The Donner DEP-20 has a touch sensitivity button right here. Now, the touch sensitivity of the DEP-20 isn't great. The Yamaha P-45s would be a bit more usable, but nonetheless, the concept here with the DEP-20 is great. You've got all your buttons all laid out right in front of you. Most of them are pretty well labeled, and it's just a lot easier to use, and that's despite the strange little quirks it has. For example, to change the sounds, you have a pair of buttons, one on the right and one on the left. Usually the one on the right will increase the number of sounds, like to go from 1 to 2 to 3, and left will decrease, but that's the opposite here, and these pair of buttons that changes the sounds are labeled trans, not sound or anything like that. And then over here you have your 2 tempo buttons for changing the tempo of your metronome, and those are correct. The one on the right increases tempo and the one on the left decreases tempo, but they aren't actually together. They're spread apart by like an inch. So the user interface of the DEP-20 is quirky, but despite those strange quirks, it's still much more usable than that of the Yamaha P-45, which is very interesting. Let me get rid of the owner's manual because I won't be diving into any of those features, and let's briefly talk about the music desks these instruments come with. I've got them right here. This is the one for the DEP-20. You can see here it's just your basic black slab of plastic, very stout. To put it in, you basically just set it in the little slot and just give it a good smack and it goes in there, good to go. And then this is the one for the Yamaha P-45. It's a little bit cheaper looking, a little bit more, not professional. It's got these big old holes in it for whatever reason. And functionally, they're pretty much identical, but the Yamaha one, just despite being a more expensive instrument and having less features than the DEP-20, the music desk feels a lot more gimpy and skimpy than the DEP-20's music desk does. The final thing I wanted to talk about, which is another big thing with these two instruments, is the pedal unit that they both come with out of the box. Let me grab those real quickly. This is the pedal unit that the Yamaha P-45 comes with out of the box. I realize I may have called it the 125 by accident earlier. I feel like I might have. If I did, I totally misspoke. But this is the instrument that the P-45 and the 125, but the 45 comes with out of the box. It's your very basic little black flappy thing that you put on the ground and step on with your foot. Now, the P-45, of course, is compatible with Yamaha's higher-end damper pedals like the FC3A and the FC4A. However, this is the pedal unit that the instrument comes with out of the box. And keep in mind that this is a much more expensive instrument than the DEP-20. This is a pedal unit the DEP-20 comes with out of the package. And although the feel of the pedal unit isn't great, the concept, once again here, is perfectly on point. The pedal unit even has a polarity switch, meaning you can use this pedal with any digital piano on the market. The build quality of the pedal unit itself is very stout and sturdy. It really doesn't move around very much on the floor, and the pedal itself, while, like I said, the feel isn't that great, it's actually made of metal. So I feel like if Donner just tweaked the little mechanism inside and gave it a little bit more oomph and made it feel a little more quality, they'd have a genuinely professional level pedal on their hands here. So I find that very interesting that a $330 digital piano comes with a pedal like this straight out of the box. Donner is really on the right track here. Earlier in the video, you may have remembered me specifying that on paper, the Donner has more features than the Yamaha P-45, because while in many regards you could theoretically consider the DEP-20 to be superior to the P-45, it has way more sounds, it has more features that are more easily accessible without needing the user manual, the pedal unit it comes with is better, the speakers it come with are better. It also, in a sense, isn't as good. So let's take a look here at the sounds, because in these regards, the Yamaha P-45 and the Donner DEP-20 kind of balance each other out. The DEP-20 has gone with a quantity over quality type of idea here, whereas the P-45 has gone with the opposite sort of sound. So let's have a listen to the default piano sound of both of these instruments. So now you can kind of hear some of the differences between the Yamaha P-45 and the Donner DEP-20, and this is where the playing field becomes a bit more even, and it's why I've been stressing throughout this whole video that on paper, the Donner is better than the Yamaha P-45, because in reality, in many aspects, the Yamaha is still definitely leading ahead of the Donner. In terms of the quality of the action, in terms of the quality of the tones, the Yamaha is, as you can hear, definitely ahead. And we'll explore all 10 of the P-45 sounds and compare them to the equivalents on the DEP-20, and we will then really see more of the differences. But as far as the action is concerned, on the Yamaha P-45, it's definitely of a higher caliber than on the DEP-20. You could hear that my performance wasn't quite as strong on the Donner as it was on the Yamaha, even though the Yamaha is up here and I have to lean forwards and play it kind of weird. It felt better to play the Yamaha than it did the Donner DEP-20. The action of the DEP-20 is kind of like if you took the GHS action in the Yamaha P-45 and added a bunch of weight and a bit of resistance to the keys, and then put it in here. That's what the action of this instrument feels like. So it is playable, and for a beginning pianist who doesn't need to play Scarlatti and play trills and fast runs, it's definitely adequate. But it is a little bit inferior to the Yamahas, which makes sense because the Yamaha is the more expensive instrument. And again, in the quality of tones as well, the dynamic response was better on the Yamaha P-45. I think the tone was a bit better too. It was less dry and less sterile. Some of that was because of the subtle reverb Yamaha's put into the sound. The DEP-20 does have a DSP effect, but it doesn't really sound that great. So we'll turn that off for the rest of the video. But those are some of the differences between the instruments. While a lot of people like to rag on the build quality of the GHS action, especially in this comparison, it's definitely the stronger action. And sure, it may not be the best built action on the market, but I don't think it's the worst either. And neither is this. This is not the worst either, but it's definitely pales in comparison to the GHS. For example, you can tell that the quality, the quality control here with the action and the tolerances, that's what I'm looking for. The tolerances of the Donner's action are vastly inferior. If you were to take the keys of the Donner and wiggle them back and forth a little bit, you can see there's a lot of slop. You probably can't see that because the camera's far away, but believe me, there's a lot of slop in these keys. And if I were to take my hand and gently graze it over the tops of the black keys like so, you can see that they are actually flopping around and rattling together. That's what's making that clacking noise. And then if you do the same up here, the same amount of pressure on the P-45, only a little bit, just one key up here one of these is only doing it, whereas everyone is doing it down here. Right? And that's about the amount of, pressure that I would use to like pet a cat or a dog or something, that kind of force. I'm not dragging my hand across the keys to make that sound. So it doesn't take very much effort to make the keys slap together on the DEP-20, whereas up on the Yamaha P-45, they don't do it as much. So the tolerances of the P-45 are much tighter. When you wiggle the keys back and forth, you can see that the tolerances are much tighter on the Yamaha, especially on the white keys. There's very little flop, whereas on the DEP-20, they just kind of wallow all over the place. So the action is inferior on the DEP-20. It's perfectly adequate for a beginning pianist, but for someone who wants a little bit more out of the instrument, it begins to fail, although you can still play advanced music on it. It's just not ideal. It's not perfect. And that's to be expected, because the DEP-20 is less expensive than the P-45. And the tones, like I've already talked about, are a bit inferior on the Donner. However, you have 237 sounds on the DEP-20, and you have 10 on the Yamaha. So for some people, that might make them want to buy the Donner DEP-20 simply because of the amount of freedom and the fun you can have with the different tones in the instrument. And we'll get more into that in a little bit here. Something else I wanted to talk about, and another big reason why the Yamaha P-45, I think, is a bit less competitive than it used to be, is because of instruments like this. And one of the features that the Donner DEP-20 has that is, again, they're on the right track here. It's not perfect, but they're heading down the right path, is with the direct line output. One direct line output. So the DEP-20 has two headphone jacks, 2/4-inch jacks up here, right here in the front, just like the Yamaha P-45 does up here. But wait, where are the headphone jacks? There's a cutout for them right here, but there's no headphone jacks. There's not even a single 3.5mm jack. Where's the headphone jack? Well, the only headphone jack and the only output of any kind on the P-45 is in the back, which in itself is silly. Who wants to have their headphone jack be in the back of the instrument? Like, why? And then not only that, but there is no proper line output or pair of line outputs like you'd see on a professional instrument on the P-45. Now, there is no pair of stereo line outputs on the Donner, but there is a singular line output on the back of the instrument, which means when you plug your a jack into that, the speakers of the Donner DEP-20 do not get muted, and the speakers of this thing sound great, by the way. The speakers in the DEP-20 are genuinely really, really good, and I feel like if you were able to pipe through a much better sound quality through the speakers, like a better, sample through the speakers, they would still sound very, very good. They're loud, they're powerful, they don't distort. They're for sure the best speakers in this price point, probably the best speakers in this price point. They're very, very solid. But anyway, back to the line output thing. You can plug something into the back of this to route it to an external amp, to route it to a PA, whatever, without muting the internal speakers, which is handy for monitoring or recording if you wanted to do that, like I am. The P-45 has only the one headphone jack, and while some instruments, like the DGX 660 and probably 670, when you plug something into the headphone jack, you can actually have the speakers still remain on. You can't do that with this, so that means recording with it is a little bit more annoying. Because otherwise I couldn't hear what I'm doing. So I've found a workaround for that, but the Yamaha P-45 has no type of line out whatsoever, whereas the Donner DEP-20 does. And it's a much cheaper instrument. So I find that interesting as well, that the P-45 is lacking in that department too. Let's take a look at the electric piano sound of the P-45 now. We'll listen to that nice little annoying beep every time we change the sound. I called it annoying. It's actually kind of a nice little sound, but it would be nice if you could toggle that on and off. Maybe there is a way to do that. Here is the electric piano sound of both of these instruments. We'll take a look at that. Here's the second variant of the electric piano, which is a DX type sound, and here it is on the Donner as well. As you would expect, the Yamaha has the better Yamaha DX sound. Up next on the P-45 is a type of pipe organ. It has two variants of that. The Donner, with all of its 237 sounds, only seems to have one pipe organ. There may be more in here, but here's the first one that comes up in the list of sounds. It's now sound number 19, church organ. This is the second pipe organ sound on the Yamaha P-45. And I believe both of those sounds are the same ones that you would find on even the P125 and even the P515. So some of the sounds in this instrument are in fact quite high quality. And sound very nice. The P-45 also has a strings pad, which we can take a listen to right here. Let me scroll through here and find the strings pad in the Donner DEP-20. It has a lot of different string sounds. Let's see, your strings 1 might be right. Let's try this one. There's quite a few different variants of them on the DEP-20. So you've got a few different types of them in here to suit your fancy. And then up next is the harpsichord sound on the P-45, which we can take a look at once I find it on the DEP-20. It should be right in here somewhere, right along the music box, celesta, clavinet, harpsichord. There it is. And here's a harpsichord. There's two variants of it on the Yamaha P-45. The Yamaha also has a second harpsichord that is a 8-foot with a 4-foot stop, so you've got two courses of strings running at the same time. Allows for a bigger sound. And then finally, on the P-45, you have a vibraphone sound, which can be paired with the vibraphone sound of the Donner as well. So you can also pair them together like that to get some good fun. You can do the same with my favorite sound in the Donner DEP-20, the music box tone, and I like to layer it with the the DX sound up here on the Yamaha P-45, you can get some interesting results. We'll play a couple of things. Every time I play the DEP-20 and the Innovis i88, I always will play this music box tone because it's a lot of fun. It's got two sounds that kind of play at once. They're a little delayed, and when you pitch that down, the delay becomes wider and wider. So up in the treble, it sounds like one sound. But when you pitch it down, you get that. So layering them together can provide some interesting results that can be very, very fun. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video and found it very interesting. I find it to be very interesting because in some regards, like I've said already in the video, but just as a recap, you can consider these two almost be equals. The positive aspects the Donner has and its negative aspects kind of balance out the Yamaha P-45's positive aspects and its negative aspects. The positive aspects of the Yamaha P-45 are that selecting sounds is arguably easier than on the Donner DEP-20, but that the quality of the sound and the quality of the action of the Yamaha P-45 are definitely higher than the Donner DEP-20. But the downsides of the Yamaha P-45 are that so many of the functionalities are hidden away within the instrument. You only have 10 sounds to work with, and you don't have any kind of a line out outside of one solitary headphone jack, despite there being a little hole for them to go in right here. The Donner DEP-20 has 238 different sounds, but they aren't as high quality as on the P-45. However, using the Donner DEP-20, despite its little odd quirks with the button layout, is for the most part much, much easier than on the Yamaha P-45. You also have a simple recorder, you've got drums and metronome just right here at your fingertips, no crazy button press combinations. All the way over here and all the way over here is how you turn on the metronome. I think, there we go. And it's got these little beepy noises to indicate, you know, when you've activated something, but none of the controls are labeled. So there's keys up here that do something, I don't know what. I don't know what those do. They're not labeled, but I've changed something in the instrument now. I don't know what I changed, but I did something. So a lot of the functionality, much of the functionality of the P-45 is hidden away within these button presses, whereas on the Donner DEP-20, it's not. The speakers of the DEP-20 are also far superior to those of the Yamaha P-45, which we've already talked about. So, and the pedal unit that comes with the DEP-20 is arguably superior to that of the P-45 too. So you have many positive aspects of the Donner that compete with the P-45, and the P-45 positive aspects also compete with those of the Donner. So I find this to be a very interesting comparison for anyone out there looking for a very affordable 88-key fully weighted digital piano. If they were looking at the new market, this could be a possibility they could come to. The Donner DEP-20 or the Innovis i88 or the Yamaha P-45. So hopefully this video has helped you answer which one is better. And for me, honestly, I do believe that the Yamaha P-45 is the better instrument as a whole, as a musical instrument, yes. But I really think that Yamaha should watch out for Donner because they're really on the right track here. So many things of the Donner DEP-20, the pedal unit, the direct line outputs, some of the, the menu and all that, they're on the right track. They're heading down the right path. And if they're able to refine and increase the quality of the DEP-20, if they come out with an instrument that is the price of the P-45 but rivals an $800 instrument, then the P-125 and things like that might begin to become a little bit less competitive, because for the price point of $330 US, the Donner DEP-20 is a massive value, huge value. It's the best within its price point, and the fact that it's able to rival an instrument and even come close to rivaling an instrument that is well over $100 more is very interesting. So I think Yamaha might be, I have no proof of this, but just speculative thinking. If Yamaha's watching what's on the market and coming out, new products, they probably have looked at the DEP-20 and gone, this is scary close to our P-45. We've got to up the game here. So I hope that Yamaha will upgrade the P-45, give it some more functionality, maybe more sounds, maybe not, it's okay. But really what I'd like to see would be a more intuitive user interface that doesn't have all of these button key presses, and most importantly, a direct line output. The sounds in here are not bad. They are very good. So piping those through an amplifier, like I'm actually doing, sounds great. Sounds really good. So if you wanted to use a very affordable 88-key digital piano on a gig, you could theoretically use the P-45, but having a direct line out and even more, a pair of stereo direct line outputs in the back would increase your sound quality and increase your flexibility with the instrument by a lot. So I really hope that Yamaha starts including this on more and more instruments, because even these budget-friendly instruments like the DEP-20 are including things like that. So hopefully you have enjoyed this video. If you did, you might want to think about subscribing to the channel. I've got lots of cool videos of acoustic pianos, digital pianos, and all kinds of things like that. If any of that sounds cool, you might want to think about subscribing. And if you do subscribe, thank you very much. If you want to support the channel and help me make videos like this, both of these and almost every other digital piano on the channel was purchased with money earned through YouTube. So if you want to help me out even further than just YouTube ad revenue, you can head over to my Patreon page and join that if you want to. And if you do that, thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.